Unit 6. This is Mr. Muhammad. Our lesson today is about relations between the geometrical shapes. So our lesson today is talking about geometry and the geometrical shapes, and we're gonna see what are the relations between these geometrical shapes. Of course, we know that we have a lot of geometrical shapes, such like triangle and quadrilateral, pentagon, circle. And last year in the grade 5, we learned the triangle, that it has 3 sides and 3 angles, 3 diagonals. And then here we have the quadrilateral. It has 4 sides. It's a polygon which contains or have 4 sides. Also we have the pentagon here. It's a polygon with 5 sides, and the circle, as you see, and there is a lot of other geometrical shapes. But this year, 6th grade, we're gonna talk about the quadrilateral only. So we're gonna talk about the quadrilaterals and the relations between the quadrilaterals and each others. So as I said before, that a quadrilateral must have 4 sides. So what do you think? Which shapes do we have in math or do we have in geometry which have 4 sides? Let's see. We have the rectangle, we have the trapezium, we have the rhombus, and the square, and the parallelogram. So these are the quadrilaterals that we are gonna learn this year, inshallah. The rectangle, the trapezium, the rhombus, the square, and the parallelogram. And we're gonna see what are the relations between these only 4 shapes: rectangle, parallelogram, rhombus, and the square. Let's take a look about the properties of each shape of them. Let's start with the father of the quadrilaterals. The father is the parallelogram. He is the first quadrilateral and most important one. Okay, let's see. The parallelogram. The properties of the parallelogram, the first property is each 2 opposite sides are equal in length and parallel. Okay, let's see how. Here, each 2 opposite sides are equal in length and parallel. Okay, the second property. Here, each 2 opposite angles are equal in measure. Here, the yellow and the blue. Each 2 opposite angles are equal in measure. Excellent. The third property. Here we have the sum of measures of each 2 consecutive angles is 180. Okay, let's ask, what is the meaning of consecutive angles? Consecutive angles means 2 angles after each others, not opposite, like this. 2 angles after each others. That means consecutive angles. Okay, the sum of these 2 consecutive angles is 180. Of course, these 2 consecutive angles, and of course also these 2 consecutive angles, the sum of them is equal 180. Okay. The two diagonals bisect each other. What is the meaning of diagonals? Diagonals means a line across the shape from the corner to the next corner or to the opposite corner. So here the parallelogram has two diagonals. These two diagonals bisect each other. What is the meaning of bisect? Bisect means to cut the line into two equal parts, as we see in the shape. So the diagonals, the two diagonals of the parallelogram bisect each other. Okay, let's see the second quadrilateral, which is the rectangle. What are the properties of the rectangle? Of course, it has all the properties of the parallelogram. Why? Because parallelogram is the father of the other shapes. So his son, which is the rectangle, has also all his properties, plus he has his own properties. Like what? Here the first property. The four angles are all equal in measure, and the measure of each is 90 degrees. So here the four angles are equal and the measure of them is what? Is 90 degrees. Okay, the second property, the two diagonals are equal in length. The two diagonals are equal in length. Okay, let's see the third quadrilateral, the rhombus. So the rhombus also is the second son of the parallelogram. So it will have all the properties of the parallelogram and has his own properties also. So don't forget that the rhombus has also all the properties of the parallelogram plus these properties. The first one, that the four sides are equal in length. The four sides of the rhombus are equal in length. The second property, that the two diagonals are perpendicular. The two diagonals are perpendicular. Okay. Let's see the last quadrilateral, which is the square. The square is the last son. So it has all the properties. It has the properties of the parallelogram plus the properties of the rectangle plus the properties of the rhombus. Let's see. The first property is that each two opposite sides are equal in length and parallel. The sum of the measures of each two consecutive angles is 180. Here we have 90 plus 90, so it's equal 180. Okay? Each two opposite angles are equal in measure. The two diagonals bisect each others. And bisect means that it cut it into two equal parts. The four angles are all equal in measure, and the measure of each is 90 degrees. The two diagonals are equal in length. The four sides are equal in length. The two diagonals are perpendicular. Okay. So now, these are the geometrical shapes, the quadrilaterals. We have the parallelogram, and he has two elder sons, which is the rectangle and the rhombus, and then the last or the youngest son, which is the square. And we know all the properties of these geometrical shapes, and we know the relations between them. Okay, let's see some important questions. Now, complete. The two diagonals of a rectangle are Excellent. Are equal in length. The rectangle whose diagonals are perpendicular is called a what? Okay, let's remember which shapes that the diagonals are perpendicular. Oh yes, we have the rhombus, diagonals are perpendicular, and the square, the diagonals are perpendicular. So let's think, what will be the answer? Rhombus or the square? Okay, let's see the question again. It says the rectangle whose diagonals are perpendicular is called a what? He said here the rectangle. So the answer will be the square, not the rhombus, because rhombus is beside the rectangle, but the square is under the rectangle. So when he say the rectangle whose diagonals are perpendicular, so the answer will be the square. Okay, when we will say rhombus, we will say rhombus if he said parallelogram instead of the rectangle. If he said the parallelogram whose diagonals are perpendicular, then the answer will be rhombus. But here he said the rectangle whose diagonals are perpendicular is called what? It's called a square. So concentrate if he's asking us about a rectangle or the parallelogram. Okay. Next question. Here he's asking me the rhombus whose one of its angles is right is called what? So what is after rhombus? The after rhombus is square. So the rhombus whose one of its angles is right is called what? We have two shapes have right angles. We have the rectangle and the square. But here he said rhombus. So what is the answer? What is after rhombus that has right angle? Yes, excellent. It's a square. And why we didn't say that it's rectangle? Because the rectangle is beside the rhombus, not under it. So when he say the rhombus whose one of its angles is right, so the answer will be square. But if he said the parallelogram whose one of its angles is right, so the answer will be rectangle. Why? Because the rectangle is under the parallelogram. But here, the rectangle is beside the rhombus, so we can't put the rectangle. We must put the belower shape. So the rhombus whose one of its angles is right, so the answer will be square. Because square is below rhombus. Okay. Here, the parallelogram in which two adjacent sides are equal in length is called a what? Let's see here, he's saying the parallelogram. So what is under the parallelogram directly? We have rectangle and we have rhombus. Okay, which one of these two shapes that has two adjacent sides are equal? The two adjacent sides are equal. And what is the meaning of adjacent? Adjacent means after each other's or beside each other's. So it is rhombus. Okay. Here, the parallelogram in which one of its angles is right is called a what? Here is the parallelogram. What is under the parallelogram? We have rectangle and rhombus. Okay. Which one of them has the right angle? Excellent. It's the rectangle. Okay. I think it's easy. Let's see another questions. We have here ABCD is a parallelogram in which AB equals 8 centimeter and BC equals 6 centimeter and measure angle ABC equals 120 degrees. Here we are asking us about to find the measure or the length of AD. What is the length of AD? Okay, AD is opposite to BC, and as we said before in the parallelogram, each two opposite sides are equal. So the length of AD equals 6 centimeters. What about CD? Excellent, it is opposite to AB. So the answer will be 8 centimeters. Very good. What about the measure of angle D? Measure angle D is opposite to measure angle B. And as we know that each two opposite sides of the parallelogram are equal in measure, so the answer will be 120 degrees. Okay, what about measure C? How we can find measure C? Yes, excellent. We knew that each two consecutive angles are equal 180. The sum of them equals 180. So the sum of measure angle B plus measure angle C equals 180. We have, or we know the measure of angle B, which is 120. So how we can get measure angle C? Excellent. 180 minus 120. The answer will be 60 degrees. Okay, what about measure angle A? Measure angle A is opposite to measure angle C, so it will be 60 also, or we can do it as the consecutive angles 180 minus 120 equals 60 degrees also, because they are consecutive angles. We have two ways to know. Okay, the last one. What is the parameter of the parallelogram ABCD? Of course, parameter means the sum of all sides. And as we know, each two opposite sides are equal. So, the parameter of the parallelogram is length plus width times 2. So, it will be 8 plus 6 times 2. The answer will be 28 centimeter, and don't forget to write centimeters. Okay. ABCD is a parallelogram in which measure angle B is 110 degrees and measure of angle CAD equals 30 degrees, and the length of AB equals 5 centimeters. He is asking me to find the length of CD. The length of CD. So, CD is opposite to AB, and as we know that AB equals 5 centimeters, so CD equals also 5 centimeters. Okay, what about measure angle BAC? BAC. Okay. As we know that measure angle B equals 110 and measure angle CAD equals 30 degrees, and of course we know that each two consecutive angles, the sum of them equals 180. But here we have a missing part of an angle. How we can get it? Excellent. We will make 180 minus 110 plus 30, and the answer will be 40 degrees. Okay, thank you so much, and see you inshallah next lesson. Goodbye.